the question I ask to all my patients when I first meet them, when I start a conversation, is what does health look like for you? Right. So it's tends to be a loaded question, and I get a lot of tears when I ask that question because it's like, wait a minute, like what? I thought you were going to ask me everything that was wrong with me. I was like, no, no, no. What does health look like for you? Because I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges that people face, and I face, is that we are influenced constantly by what we see outside, from social media to billboards to magazine covers, everything telling us constantly what healthy looks like, right? Everyone has something to sell you. So they're saying healthy looks like X number, you should have a six pack, or you should be running a marathon. You should be, going to this type of gym and wearing this type of outfits while you're working out, or you should be this dress size or this weight or whatever it might be, right? We're constantly bombarded with these images.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Reshape Your Health podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Morgan Nolte. On today's show, we are delving into the realm of spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, and how all of those impact our physical health and vice versa. My guest today is Dr. Chiti Parikh, and she is the Executive Director of Integrative Health and Wellbeing at New York Presbyterian Hospital and Weill Cornell Medicine. She's a medical doctor. She's a board certified internal medicine and integrative medicine specialist with additional training in functional medicine, medical acupuncture, and Ayurveda. She recently published her first book, Intentional Health, and she combines cutting-edge Western medicine with ancient wisdom of Eastern traditions in a truly holistic approach. And we've had one other guest on here talking about Ayurveda and some of the Eastern medicine principles, but it's been a while. So I'm really excited to revisit some of these principles and, just help educate and enlighten our podcast community on the importance of integrating whole body health. So thank you so much for joining me today. Let's just get started with your story and how you yourself have really melded these two Eastern and Western medical practices.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for having me. So I grew up in India. So when I would get sick, my grandma would take me to the kitchen, open up the spice box, and put together some concoctions. And there I was, and I was better all of a sudden. So I grew up with sort of food as medicine, like everything you need is right in the kitchen to heal you. That's sort of a mindset. When I moved here as a teenager, it was a very different world for me. And I went on to, graduate from college and started thinking about medical school. Before I did that, actually, before I went to medical school, I actually took a year off and I went backpacking through Asia for a year by myself. And I did that because I really wanted to immerse myself in Eastern medicine and experience it firsthand. And also, I wanted to learn more about who I was and about the profession I was about to go into. So I wanted a deeper understanding, and it was a life-altering journey, to say the least. I did everything from, spending time in silent meditation retreats with monks, to exploring the most remote parts of Asia and understanding local herbal medicine and cultures, to even partying on the beaches of Thailand because I was like 21. Why not, right? But it was a truly transformative experience because I got to see not just how people heal, but also how people live. Because healing is so much more than just disease. Healing is health, and health is how you experience life. Your body's a vessel for you to experience life. So it really broadened my understanding and definition of what I would be responsible for as a doctor, as a healer. So I brought a lot of that back into my sort of wheelhouse as I was training to become a doctor. And once I finished training, I recognized that, I trained at one of the top institutions in the country. I was working at one of the top hospitals in the country, but I still felt like there was something missing. It just felt like a revolving door where people were coming in, you're kind of patching them up, and then that's it. And then they come right back. So I wanted to be the kind of doctor who people go to not only when they're sick, but people go to stay healthy. It's a very different definition. So hence my
Mhm.
pursuit of additional training from holistic medicine, integrative, functional, Ayurveda, acupuncture. I just wanted to expand my toolkit that I can bring to my patients to, again, not just fix them when they're sick, but keep them healthy.
Mhm. Okay, some fun follow-up questions for you. Random too, but anybody who knows me very well knows that you just described, like, my dream year of going and, like, doing the silent retreats with the monks and, like, going to the beach and all these things, and so the first thing, like, if I was just your girlfriend sitting down and having a cup of coffee, I would wanna ask you, what's the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself during that year?
I recognize that I'm extremely resourceful. And again, when I was traveling, this was pre iPhone, almost like new internet era where you had to have like a guidebook. You couldn't just Google map it. You couldn't just book a ticket or you had to literally be extremely resourceful to be in parts of the world that had like often no running water or electricity even. So that's something I'm really proud of myself. I'm glad I learned that about myself because now when I find myself in challenging situations, it's like if I could figure out how to get around in Burma, like I'll be fine. Like I live in New York City, I'll be fine. But it just changed my perspective and recognize that I have it so easy at the end of the day and like I have all the tools I need to figure my way out of any situation.
Cool. Okay, so my next question was, what do you feel like your patients struggle with the most? You know, if you're thinking about, okay, you have all of these tools in your toolbox, and people are coming to you and they want to be healthy. Not just like they don't come to you just because they're sick, but they want to come to you because they're healthy. And you're doing kind of a lifestyle assessment. What area of lifestyle do you feel like people struggle with the most these days?
I think first and foremost, the question I ask to all my patients when I first meet them, when I start a conversation, is what does health look like for you? Right. So it tends to be a loaded question, and I get a lot of tears when I ask that question because it's like, wait a minute, like what? I thought you were going to ask me everything that was wrong with me. I was like, no, no, no. What does health look like for you? Because I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges that people face, and I face, is that we are influenced constantly by what we see outside, from social media to billboards to magazine covers, everything telling us constantly what healthy looks like, right? Everyone has something to sell you. So they're saying healthy looks like X number, you should have a six pack or you should be running a marathon. You should be, going to this type of gym and wearing this type of outfits while you're working out, or you should be this dress size or this weight or whatever it might be, right? We're constantly bombarded with these images. So often when I ask people, what is your goal? It's often like, I want this, I want that, because it's very much what's fed to us subconsciously. Instead, I ask people, okay, that's great, but why? Why do you want that? Why do you want to run a marathon? Why do you want a six pack? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to, you know, uh, not, focus on longevity? Like, why? So my job is to figure out the intention behind everyone's idea of what health looks like. And that can take some work because we have to deprogram people from all the things we've been bombarded with and look inwards and ask the question as to what health looks like for me. And it doesn't have to match that perfect idea from a magazine or from Instagram, but something that's holds true meaning and value. Because when you identify that, it is so much easier to stick to any diet and lifestyle changes you're going to make versus doing it just because, someone told you to do it versus what's actually meaningful.
Yeah, you can't see it, but, like, right there in the frame, it says, "Keep your eye on your why." So, like, I'm all about that. But it's hard. Like you said, I think the biggest thing holding people back from behavior change is their current circumstances. And that means what they see with their eyes, what they hear with their ears, what they smell, like food temptations. And it's like they can't quite cast the vision for themselves. It's like they know what they don't want, but they're not quite sure what they do want. And if you don't know what you want, that's like going to a restaurant and saying, I don't want the cheeseburger, I don't want the fries, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want that. But like they're like, okay, well, what do I give you? So I think that having a really good, accurate, like wellness vision for yourself is important. So I think if we're digging deeper, and like, let's say, okay, we've kind of figured out like what health looks like for you. I would also challenge the listeners to say, what does it feel like to you? Because that's very important too, not just like objective things. I know you get to that, but just to remind people that the feeling of health and well-being is very important. Then what's the next step in your process to help people get there?
So I think about setting an intention when it comes to your health goals as sort of putting instruction to GPS, right? If you want to get somewhere, what does a GPS require of you for you to get the easiest, fastest route possible, right? It needs where you're starting out from, right? Your origin and your destination. So my job as a doctor is to tell you where you're starting out. You're going to give me subjective information as to how you're feeling, what are the barriers you're facing, what are the things you want to fix, and what health looks like for you or feels like for you. And my job is to add that objective piece and say, okay, if that's what's happening, let's figure out some of these metrics. Let me do a detailed blood test analysis. Let me examine you. Let me figure out what are the things that I'm seeing that we can also track as we're going forward as ways to understand how much progress you're making, to understand what your unique needs are. Right? It's not just about a diagnosis. Just because you came to me with some diagnosis doesn't mean that that's all I'm going to focus on. Instead, I want to
Mhm.
find objective data, blood test, whatever, any kind of test I can do to figure out where you are, what's meaningful to you. So let's figure out where you're starting from. So if we know where we're starting out from, we know where we want to get to, then I can help you map a journey that makes the most sense for you, right? Because we're all working with different set of resources. We're coming from different backgrounds. So it's not that someone wants to lose 10 pounds or 40 pounds, whatever it might be. The path does not look the same for everyone. It's different for every single person because health
Mhm.
is not just about the physical symptoms or diagnosis. It's about your mental, your emotional, your social, spiritual, environmental, community. Like all of those things play an equal role in how we're determining where you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there. So that's what a holistic approach really looks like. It's very much customized to the person in front of me, and my job with years of medical training, that's what I'm supposed to do is help you chart that path forward and make sense out of all of these steps so that it's not overwhelming for you.
Mhm. So, how would you then start? Okay, so I want to incorporate the spiritual and the mental, but I'm just kind of curious in your processes. So, we know the destination. It's kind of like begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, Habits of Highly Effective People. And then we're going to backtrack and figure out where are we starting from, plug in a little GPS. But then what's the next step? So do you have certain processes or like pillars of your approach where you want your patients to really focus on in a sequential order? Or how does that look in your practice?
Yeah. So in integrative medicine, we focus on four pillars of health, which is diet, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and stress management. So I like to take stock of where are we in these domains, right? So let's talk about diet, nutrition, not just what you're eating, but when are you preparing your meals? Where are you grocery shopping? Who else are you cooking for in the family? Do you cook? What kind of access do you have to fresh fruits and vegetables? Like, this is the type of details we talk about. It's not just about me giving you a
Mhm.
piece of paper and say, follow this diet. Good luck.
Yeah,
And
here's
then
a handout on the Mediterranean diet. That's what a lot of doctors do. Yeah.
But it's so much easier to give a pamphlet. But what if someone lives in a food desert? Like you don't have access, or the way groceries are these days, very expensive. People in New York often live in cramped quarters. They don't even have a proper kitchen to cook in, right? So these are the real life things that we need to take into consideration when we talk about diet and nutrition. It's so much more than just saying follow keto, paleo, or vegan diet, right? And then we talk about
Right.
sleep. So sleep is fundamental to rest and restoration. That's how your body heals. That's how body detoxes. So detox and healing does not happen with just supplements and just diet. Is you need to allow time and space for your body to do what it does best. So sleep is also one of those things where we focus on different factors that are affecting your sleep, whether it's your circadian rhythm, your hormones, your living situation, your work lifestyle, or your work demands, your family demands, right? So focusing on sleep as another domain. Then we talk about exercise and fitness. So most of the patients I see can't afford a gym membership. So we have to think about creative ways to optimize your lifestyle in a way that you're not just stuck, buying expensive gym membership and thinking that's the only way to exercise. No, you walking to the grocery store and back, picking up your kids from school, going up a few flights of stairs to catch the subway, like all of these things matter. So highlighting that it's not just a fancy gym membership that's called exercise. There's so many other ways to do it. And research actually says the other way of being active throughout the day is actually much better than just spending an hour at the gym and then sitting for 8 hours. So just giving
Yes.
people that space to say there are other ways to get this thing done. It's not just what you see on social media or on TV. And then last but never the least, stress management, because I find that stress often is the root cause for why people are not able to stick to a certain diet, right? Because stress is going to make us crave foods that are often not good for us, even if we know everything about nutrition. It's also going to prevent us or have that motivation to go work out or be outside. It's also going to affect our sleep, right? So often start with stress management. I take an inventory of like how stressed are what source of stress do you have right now, whether it's your health, your family, finances, like what is your source of stress and how do you rate it for yourself and how do you cope with it? So depends on the patient, but I often start with stress management because I know it's going to influence the other domain. But this is a good approach because we can all do that for ourselves. Ask ourselves, where am I? How do I feel about my nutrition, my diet habits? How do I feel about my quality and quantity of sleep? Do I feel like I'm active enough? And how am I doing with stress right now? So, this is something we can check in with ourselves on a regular basis. So, my job is to train my patients, give them the tools that they can implement on their own. That doesn't necessarily mean they
Mhm.
have to come to my office every time. So, but that's a great starting point for everybody.
I agree. First of all, so we have something called our Zibli habit hierarchy. And the very first habit is like a daily mindset routine. I really like people to do a morning one and then work into morning and evening. And I think that that's just such a beautiful way to create space to build self esteem and self confidence, but also to incorporate some stress management practices, whether that's visualization, meditation, deep breathing. So I'm kind of like, that's one tool that we use in our program. But I was kind of curious what tools you recommend for your patients if they're starting for stress management. I would
Mhm.
love to hear some of your best stress management tools.
So I'm a big fan of combining Eastern and Western medicine. So in my practice, I often do both together because I also love giving people their own data, right? I can talk about meditation and journaling and setting an intention all day long, but I can tell you majority of people do not do it, right? Because they know how important it is, but it just doesn't sort of fit into their schedule, right? Because they cannot quantify how much benefit they're getting out of it just yet, because it's not an instant gratification often. So currently what I'm doing for stress management is I'm using a heart rate variability monitor. So we do this in a group setting. So in a group program for 4 weeks, I have all my patients wear this heart rate variability monitor around their chest. And heart rate variability is an indirect measurement of how stressed someone is, how much fight and flight they're in versus relaxation. So it's different than heart rate. So heart rate often goes up when we're stressed, but heart rate variability is different. Heart rate variability is a good thing. So the lower it is means more stressed we are. Higher it is means we are more relaxed, we're more resilient. So, heart rate variability monitor is a nice way for us to understand okay, how much time in the day am I spending in fight and flight versus relaxation, right? Where am I in that spectrum? And what is helping me get better? What is sort of stressing me out? Because, yes, some of these things are obvious, but it's often not the case what I realized when I started wearing this monitor. So, everyone in the group wears it. The beauty of this monitor is that when you start getting in the stress zone, the red zone, it starts to vibrate gently. So then you recognize, oh, I'm having that argument with my husband. It's vibrating. Okay, I need to take a step back and take a few deep breaths. I'm running to catch the subway. I'm going to be late. I'm thinking about all the horrible things going to happen when I'm late to my meeting. Okay, that thing is buzzing. I need to take a break. I need to pause, just take a few deep breaths. Like it's not that big of a deal. So that's real-time biofeedback, and that is extremely, extremely helpful for people to understand what situations are truly stressful, not necessarily what you think is stressful, but what your body actually perceives as stress, which can be two very different things. So, and also the opposite is true. So, I have a toddler at home, and what I recognize that one of the most stressful times when I'm trying to feed him, because he's a very picky eater, but one of the happiest when my heart variability is the highest is when I'm playing with him, when I'm running around and just being silly with him, right? So it also helps you understand what are the things that fill your cup, that charge your battery, emotional, mental, physical. So then you can do more of it. So sometimes I put everything on a platter and say, "Oh, you should be spending more time, in nature. You should be journaling this." And they're like, "Okay, I know, all of it's good." But when they see, "Oh my God, when I walk my dog, when I'm petting my dog, or when I'm listening to my favorite music, this thing is like going off the charts in a good way. So I really need to do more of this," because it's almost like a prescription then for them. It's like, all right, you're listening to your favorite band every single day, for 10 minutes, or you're spending time with
Yeah.
your dog, you're spending, you might spend extra 10 minutes walking your dog every day because it's actually healing you. It's therapeutic. So I think looking at your own numbers, your data can be a total game changer. And that can really lead to more sustainable results. So that's what I do in my practice. I'm all about things that are practical, they're actionable, but also sustainable.
Yeah, lots of follow-up thoughts here. It's almost like the continuous glucose monitor, but for your stress.
Exactly. That's
So
exactly what I
very
think
cool.
it is. Yeah.
What do you have a certain preferred brand for heart rate, like, variability monitoring, or is, like, does an Apple Watch do it? What are the tech recommendations that you have there?
So a lot of devices from like Apple Watch, Garmin Watch, there's Whoop, there's a bunch of them that do heart availability monitoring, but they don't often do it in real time. Because when you try to monitor heart rate variability from your wrist, it's often not that accurate because of motion. So what you really need is a wearable, like a strap that actually goes on your chest, because the
Okay,
way it detects it is actually doing an EKG. So it's similar to doing an
okay,
EKG, and then it analyzes the heart rate variability for that. So it's way more accurate. So there's a few brands. There's a company called Heart Math that does a wearable that's not designed for to go on the chest. It actually clips on your earlobe. So that's one.
hmm,
Even Polar, there's a Polar band. Polar is a company that makes a lot of these like Fitbit type of wearables. They have a band that can also measure heart rate variability. And the one I've been using is called Leaf, Lief. It's a new company.
okay.
That's the one that you wear and actually vibrates when the setting goes low. So you can
Yeah,
set it how sensitive it is. But I find that to be the most innovative and powerful because it's not just about wearing the monitor for 10 minutes when I'm sitting and relaxing and meditating. Like my numbers are going to be pretty good. Like I want it to buzz and like stop me in my tracks when I am going a million miles an hour and like rushing through and stressing myself out without recognizing it. So it's a form of
yeah.
biofeedback. So this type of training, I think, is just so, so powerful.
Yeah, and I've heard of heart rate variability. We have an 8 sleep, which is a for people that don't know, or sleep 8. It's like a mattress cover, and it will tell me my heart rate variability overnight. I was kind of curious about that though. I wanted to reiterate a point. You said when heart rate variability is low, that means that you're stressed because people, if they're not familiar with the difference between heart rate variability, they might get a little bit confused. So having a low resting heart rate is healthy. Having a high resting heart rate could indicate poor health, but it's kind of the opposite with heart rate variability. So having um, low heart rate variability, meaning like what do you say for an example? Could you give an example of low heart rate variability that would indicate that you're stressed?
Yeah, so low heart rate variability often happens in periods of emotional, mental, or physical stress, like when you're sick. your heart variability can go down when you're emotionally, distraught, especially when you're experiencing symptoms of anxiety, PTSD, all of those things can affect your heart rate variability. But the good thing is you can change it. It's almost like, you're a physical therapist. So if you sprain something, if you have pain anywhere, like go through a surgery, like you can rehabilitate, right? You can improve your performance, your stamina, your resilience. And the same goes for your nervous system. So it's all about when we're working out, we're training our muscles, our biceps and our quads, right? But this is like exercising one nerve called the vagus nerve, VAGUS. And that one nerve controls our nervous system, helps us get out of fight and flight into relaxation. So heart rate variability
So with
monitoring
heart
or
rate
biofeedback.
variability,
Mhm.
like when heart rate variability is low, is an example of that, like maybe they range from, I'm just guessing here,
Mhm.
like 90 to 110, whereas if heart rate variability is high, they might be from like 60 to 110. Is that a good
Yeah, so there
example?
are numbers depending on which device you're using, they use different benchmarks, but the most important thing is
Okay.
most devices get to learn what your heart rate variability range is. So the way some of these
Mhm.
devices work is you wear it for about a day or 2, and it's learning from your data. So it knows, okay, in a given day, this is sort of your range, right? So your best numbers are here, your worst numbers are here. So second day, okay, so I get an idea what your range is, and based on that, it will say, okay, I'm going to start buzzing if you are say below 30%
Mm.
of what your normal typically is. So it's a
Okay.
lot more customized. It's not about, a perfect number that someone needs to chase. It's more about where are you and how much improvement do you have week after week. So
And my other question there was, is it measuring it on like a per minute basis, like a heart rate variability per minute? Is that how it kind of gauges on if you're going kind of dipping too low or dipping too high? Because in my mind, a healthy heart rate is 60 beats per minute, right? But maybe the next minute you're at 61 beats, and maybe the next minute you're at 65 beats. So is it kind of just continuously tracking the beats per minute? Is that
it
how
is.
this
It's like a
works?
real-time EKG, that's what it's doing. So the way I think about heart rate
Okay.
variability is that let's say I'm sitting here, right? I want my heart rate to be low because I don't need to waste all the energy pumping all this blood really fast if I don't have to. So I want my heart rate to be 60. But the minute, let's say a fire alarm goes off right now, and I need to get up and run, and I want my heart rate to go from 60 to 100 so I can get out of here as fast as possible. So when someone has good heart rate variability, it can vary really fast. It can go from 60 to 100 real quick, right? And can also come down to 60 really quick. So what your body's doing when your heart rate variability is good is that you're being very efficient. You're not wasting energy. So one of the ways people often feel when they're chronically stressed is they feel physically exhausted. That's
Mhm.
because their heart rate is not varying. It's kind of getting stuck at a high heart rate. So even if when I'm sitting down here,
Yeah.
if I'm stressed, my heart's beating at 90, 100. It's a lot of extra energy that I'm wasting when that body doesn't need to. So no wonder at the end of the day, you're going to feel like you've been walking on a treadmill all day. That's literally what your heart has been doing. So no wonder you feel that way. So heart rate variability is all about how adaptive, how resilient is your heart to match to what your physical needs really are. So often when those
Okay.
two things separate, that's when it's extra stress on the body. You're spending a lot of extra energy that you don't need to.
Yes. Okay. I that really, I think, nailed it home. I think we haven't actually covered this topic on the podcast before in like over 200 episodes. We have not covered heart rate variability and monitoring. So I'm really excited to bring that new topic to the community. Now, let's start to incorporate some of like the mental, emotional, spiritual aspects here. So let's say, okay, now we have the data. Now we know what brings you joy. Now we know what stresses you out. Then where do we go? So what's the next tool that you might suggest somebody implement if they know, all right, every morning at 8:30 when you're driving to work, you're stressed out. Or every morning at 7, I'm a young my mom, my kids are almost 6 and 3, so I'm a young mom too. Every evening about 8 p.m., when the kids are kind of going down, that's when you're most stressed out. So what do you do like once people really understand more comprehensively what stresses them out? What's your next suggestion?
So you pick the time of the day. So I often start with either activity or time of the day that's worse for you.
Okay.
So for instance, morning routine can be very stressful. Like if people have a long commute, right? Just getting on the subway, getting ready, getting on the train or in the car can be extremely stressful. So we say, okay, so let's just focus on that. Let's forget about everything else. So how about like what about the morning is stressful? Say, oh, because I have to figure out when I'm packing for breakfast, I have to pack my lunch, I have to get kids ready, this and that. I was like, okay, how much of this can we take off from the morning routine? How much can we prep ahead of time? Right? Or how much can you
Yeah.
engage other people around you to help you? Right? So, what are
Mm-hmm.
things that your partner can help you with? What are things that your kids can help you with? How about you ask your kids to pick out their outfit for the morning the night before and ask them and have them help you prepare their breakfast or lunch, the night before, or at least plan it out. So, it's all about taking that time to say, no, this is important. Even the back of the mind, okay, this morning's stressful, but you don't know how much is affecting you. Completely changes your entire day, right? So this is as much of a health priority as going to the doctor's office for an appointment. So that's how I think about it. So we really get down to it, and that's where some of the health coaching aspects comes into play. It's about practical solutions, and no man or woman is an island. So this is where you have to engage your support systems as well. So you don't feel the pressure. Like it's not just up to you to fix this. Everyone benefits if you're less stressed. Everyone benefits around you if you are healthier. So partner up, get people to support you because then you don't feel alone. You actually feel more empowered.
Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of what stresses us out and how we can plan ahead to address those stressors proactively, how would you incorporate spirituality into this mix? Because I think a lot of people view quote unquote getting healthy as like what they do in the physical realm as like, what am I eating? How am I moving? How am I sleeping? But what's kind of your number one tip to incorporate some spirituality into this to have a more integrated approach?
So in Eastern medicine, there's a belief that all diseases start when there is something wrong in our spirit, and then it manifests in the mind, and then finally it manifests in the body. So whatever we're seeing or feeling in the body actually started out in our mind, and before that in our spirit. So when we talk about true preventive care, it's about taking care of our spirit, our spiritual health and spiritual well-being. It should be top of our list, right? Because that's where it all starts. So I often engage in this discussion with my patients, and I ask them, what brings you a sense of joy and purpose in life? What really fills your spiritual cup? Because I do feel like a lot of us, most of us, are experiencing a spiritual burnout because we are our physical, mental, body is taking up so much of our time that we never focus on the spirit. It often feels ignored.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
disconnection from our spiritual energy often manifests as anxiety, sleep issues, physical pain. So that's why our spirit needs tending to. And that's a work that we do one on one with ourselves, looking inward and having these dialogues. So, what is most meaningful to me? What brings me joy and purpose? And when we ask those questions, whatever the answer is, that will help us prioritize everything from our daily routine to what we do for work, what we do with our family, with our friends, our relationships. That becomes the guiding light. So when we have a guiding light, a lot of decisions become much easier, right? So that's why I often tell people focus on your spiritual health because that will be what gets you physically, mentally, emotionally healthier. So don't think about it something
Yeah.
separate that you have to do. It's fundamental to your mental and physical health. It's a strong foundation
Yeah.
that you're building, after which any diet changes, any exercise routine, anything else you do will be so much more powerful and far more effective.
Yeah, and I'll give you a kind of a little example from my own life, and then to wrap it up, I would love to hear like how you incorporate spirituality into your lifestyle. And for me, we were kind of talking offline there for a minute, and I said I think that for me, like historically, faith and spirituality have been very linked, and like spirituality was something out there, like the God up there, and I didn't really fully embrace like the spirit within me and my own spirituality, and living in harmony with what brings my spirit peace. You know, it's like pushing, 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 like um achievement, achievement, and like not really living with spiritual alignment of peace and joy and rest and what I think like love, honestly. So what I had to start doing, I have a daily mindset practice, and I started incorporating lines to give myself the messaging of, I do a morning routine and meditate daily to connect with my higher self so that I can take inspired and energetically aligned action. So I'm giving myself that messaging every day of like, I rest, I meditate so that I can take inspired and energetically aligned action. And that way, if I ever feel myself pushing too hard, or if I feel myself stressed, I can back up and be like, hey, is this really in alignment with like what's best for my spirit? And then the other thing, it just came to me the last time I did like a little half day retreat with myself. And it's like, I invest in my relationship with my husband. We go on date nights. Do I invest in my relationship with God very much right now? And so we go to church. I have 2 young kids. There's no childcare in this church. So it's like, that is not a very relaxing, peaceful, spiritually enhancing thing for me right now. I hope it is someday again, but right now it's just not. And kind of going through the motions type of thing. And so I'm like, why don't I go on a date with God once a month? Like, why don't I go on a date with myself, my higher self, my spiritual self, and like invest in my spiritual self a half a day a month? Can't I do that? And so it's like making it, first off, like you said, bringing the awareness to light that like we are spiritual beings. We need to cultivate that side of ourselves. But then secondly, like planning it, planning it in a day or planning it in a month or a week, just some set aside time to connect. That has been really beneficial for me. I'm kind of curious, what does that look like for you?
Absolutely, and I wish I could record what you just said and and send it to all my patients because it's so powerful and so
Yeah.
essential. So what I do every morning, I have a meditation yoga practice for 30 minutes. So that's what charges me spiritually, mentally, and physically. And then in the book, I talk about this, a 28-day reset. It's actually inspired by an Ayurveda. Everyone is supposed to do a sort of, it's not even a detox, it's just focusing inward at least once a year, if not twice a year, ideally at the change of season. So the 28-day reset is inspired from this ancient detox ritual called panchakarma that's been going on for 5,000 years that yogi actually used to look inward. So we talk about detox as more of physical, but what I find is actually an enormously spiritual detox for me. Because in Eastern medicine, there's a belief that food needs to be digested properly. The food that is not digested properly, if food that is digested properly becomes nutrition, food that's not digested properly becomes toxic and root cause of disease. Thoughts, emotions also need to be digested and processed. And when they're not, they also become root cause of disease. So for me, the 28-day reset, I do it twice a year. And that's my opportunity to just simplify my lifestyle, my diet, and take that time for myself. And when I come out of it, I am a brand new person inside out because the amount of stress and all the things I have to do as a doctor, as a mom, as someone who's taking care of the family, it's a lot on me. So I need that time for myself to reset and focus inwards, recharge myself so I can be a better mother, I can be a better doctor, I can be a better friend. So it's like putting that
Mhm.
oxygen mask on yourself. So for me, 28-day reset does it. And I really encourage everybody to take that time because it's really not optional. It's fundamental to our well being and it will make us better at everything we do. And everything we do becomes far more effective and meaningful in the process.
Yes. So is that reset described in your book by chance?
It is, yes. And it's all about doing
Okay.
less, not more. In the 28 degrees, it seems long, but it's really very much part of daily routines, nothing crazy that you have to do, but it's a very thoughtfully designed and inspired from this ancient detox ritual that is just so powerful. And actually, it's one of the things that really helped me. So I had really bad case of long COVID and I was on the front
Mhm.
lines in New York. So it's the ancient detox ritual that really helped me get over the symptoms. So that's what really inspired me to simplify it in a way that could be easily and safely done by everyone. So it holds a special place in my heart, and I hope more and more people can benefit from it.
Well, thank you. Can you let us know where they can learn more about you and your book?
Yeah, so the book is available everywhere books are sold. You can check out my website, intentionalhealth.io, or follow me on Instagram at intentionalhealth_.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and expertise today. I know we're at your cutoff, so I really appreciate it. And I hope that our listeners got a lot out of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Morgan.